What is up, everyone? It is Mr. M, and I'm back today with a new video. In the background, hopefully you can hear it, one of my favorite albums that came out last year, Cannibal Corpse, Red Before Black, is going to be blasting in the background. And today I have part 1 of my top 20 albums for 2018. This one's going to be 20 to 11, and then the next one will be my top 10. A couple things, I feel like I don't have to say them, but I'm going to say them anyway. This is my list, it's not yours. If you think an album should have made it, or I put an album on here that you think shouldn't have made it, or if you think an album should have been higher, I don't give a shit. It's my list, not yours. If you want your opinion to be heard, make your own. And with that, let's go into the top 20. Starting off at number 20 with The Long Shot, with Love Is For Losers. This is their debut album. This was surprise released on April 20th, along with the new Sleep record. It features Billie Joe Armstrong, Jeff Matika from Green Day, and Kevin Preston, and I forget their drummer's name. Both of them are from Prima Donna. And this, if you go into this expecting a Green Day record or a Prima Donna record, you're going to be pretty disappointed. It definitely has the sounds of those bands. You know, you got the title track, Kill Your Friends, A Soul Surrender, Happiness, The Last Time. You got some excellent songs on here from these guys. But yeah, it's not a Green Day record. It's not a Prima Donna record. If you like those bands, you're probably going to dig this one. And they definitely put together a solid collection of songs for this release that I feel like is better under a different name, like The Long Shot, as opposed to their respective bands. Next up, at number 19, we have Haunt with Burst Into Flame, also their debut album. This one put out on Shadow Kingdom Records. It features Trevor William Church of Beastmaker, and Haunt is one of the best bands out right now that is playing the sort of new wave of British heavy metal style of heavy metal. They put 9 songs on here, and there's not a bad song on here. You got the opening track, which is the title track, Wanderlust. Those are the highlights for me, but there's not a bad song on this record. They are a full band for this album. If you didn't know, their EP that came out last year, Luminous Eyes, it was just Trevor William Church playing everything by himself. And I got to see these guys live earlier this year, opening for Toxic Holocaust and Municipal Waste, and they did not put on a bad show at all. You know, they're like Blood Incantation in the way that they can replicate exactly how they sound on their album perfectly live. And next up is a band that everyone loves to talk shit about, but I don't really care because I like them. This is Black Veil Brides with Veil, coming in at number 18. This is their 5th record, their first in over 3 years. And this is a huge step up in my opinion. Their first 3 records were amazing, and then their 4th record, their self-titled one, it wasn't as good as those first 3. It wasn't bad by any means, but it definitely wasn't as good as those ones. And they brought it on this one. It is, conceptually, it is a follow-up to their 3rd album, Wretched and Divine. On here you got the 2 parts. The opening track, Insepiens Ad Finum, I butchered that, but it's a spoken word intro, just like the first track on Wretched and Divine. And when the first song, The Outsider, was released, I was very skeptical about it, but then once they released the 2nd single, My Vow, and then Wake Up, and then when the album came out, a song like Dead Man Walking, which is an 8-minute long song, you know, they put an excellent album together. And after 3 years of not putting out a new album, they definitely made it worth the wait with Veil. Coming in at 17, we have Dimmu Borgir with Ionian. First record in 8 years from these guys. And this is sort of a return to form. I'm not going to talk about it too much, even though it is my year-end list, because I talked about it in a previous video. But it was not entirely worth the 8-year wait, but there's still some excellent songs on here. You got the first single, Interdimensional Summit, and then Wolves and Snakes, the Unveiling, the opening track, the last track, Rite of Passage, I'm pretty sure that is an instrumental. This sounds like the, it's better than Abrahadabra. This kind of sounds like the middle stuff, like Puritania, Misanthropic Euphoria, and In Sorte Diaboli. And the re-recording of Stormblast that came out in 2005. It kind of sounds along the lines of this, but, you know, at this point in their career, Dimmu Borgir is not going to go back to what For All Tid was, or the original Stormblast recordings. But yeah, it's a step up from Abrahadabra, and you know, this, to me, it's one of their better albums, and definitely out of their last few albums, I think it's might even be, after In Sorte Diaboli, it's probably the best for me. Next up, A Feather and Bone with Bestial Hymns of Perversion. Put out on Profound Lore Records, these guys hailing from Denver, Colorado. These guys pretty much they changed up their sound drastically. Before this album came out, they had a couple demos, an EP, and maybe even one more album before this. But it was more of a hardcore punk type influence, and then they just completely changed up the sound and brought on some filthy, chaotic death metal. Kind of reminds me of Ascended Dead in a way. I got to see them live as well earlier this year, and they performed this album in its entirety. And I can understand why, because if you compare this to the rest of their discography, not that the rest of their discography is bad, but this is just so much better. And, you know, them becoming more of a straight up death metal band as opposed to a hardcore or crust influence band, it definitely shows. And these guys are definitely one of the better death metal bands hailing in the underground scene right now. Along with these guys, Scorched, Ecliptic Butchery, put out on 20 Bucks Spin. And 20 Bucks Spin and Profound Lore Records is a label that just absolutely killed it this year. These guys, hailing from Delaware, this is a concept album, I'm pretty sure. It's about like a guy who becomes a serial killer and he doesn't know why, and I think aliens were controlling him or something along those lines. But concept aside, musically, this is more cleanly produced than most death metal albums that came out this year, but it is still a downright dirty, filthy album. And you guys, if you've slept on this one, which to me, this is one of the more lesser talked about death metal albums that's coming out this year, definitely pick this shit up. Don't sleep on it. Next up, what I'm pretty sure is black metal album of the year for me. This is Wayfarer with World's Blood, also from Colorado. These guys are self-proclaimed black metal of the American West. It is very unique sounding, and I can't really think of like any other black metal bands that I'd be able to compare them to. It's 5 songs long. It's about 45 minutes long, so it's definitely a longer sort of album, but the way that this album is composed, I know atmospheric is an overused term, but the atmosphere for this album, along with the crushing riffs, it's just not tremolo picking the entire time like a lot of traditional black metal bands are. No, they wrote and composed an absolutely beautiful record. And now if you're a fan of black metal, you might be in for a surprise with this, because, you know, I don't listen to black metal that much, but I can't compare this to another black metal band in any way. But yeah, some absolutely atmospheric, crushing black metal. Next up, another band people love to talk shit about, but The Fuck I Give is Nowhere to Be Found. This is Asking Alexandria's self-titled record. And this one actually came out in December of 2017, but I didn't feel like I could justify putting it on my year-end list last year because I'd only listened to it 2 or 3 times. And if I had put it on my year-end list last year, this would have been like 2nd or 3rd. And, you know, now giving it more time, you know, even though it did come out in 2017, because it came out in December, I feel like I can put it on my year-end list. This is the album that features the return of their original vocalist, Danny Worsnop, after he left at the beginning of 2015. And Asking Alexandria on this record went from a metalcore band to a straight-up hard rock band. You know, they've been opening up for bands like Godsmack and Shinedown, and they did a co-headlining tour with Black Veil Brides too. You know, there's hardly any screaming on this record. You know, they've definitely got the songs like the return single, Into the Fire, Eve, I Am One, Room 138. You know, those all have screaming on them, but for the most part, you know, they went towards a more mainstream hard rock sound, but they didn't really compromise themselves, you know. I feel like a lot of people who are fans of Asking Alexandria, especially the last album that Danny was on, which was From Death to Destiny, you know, if you liked the sound of that record, this one you'll like too. You know, the only sort of weird song on here is Empire with Big X, which is basically a rap song, but it still doesn't feel too out of place either. And then the one song that caught everyone by surprise probably was the song Vultures, which is Asking Alexandria's first all-acoustic song. And I don't know where I'd put this in their discography, but it is definitely overall a solid record. There's only one song on there that I don't really like. At number 12, we have a pop album. This is Singular by Sabrina Carpenter, put out on Hollywood Records. This is her 3rd record. It's also part 1 of a 2-part album. The second part's probably going to be out sometime in the beginning of next year. There's only 8 songs on here, but given how much I didn't like her last record, now having 8 songs and every single one of them actually be good, you know, that's probably a good thing. You know, I'd rather have an 8-song album with 8 good songs as opposed to a 14-song album or a 12-song album and have a bunch of filler tracks. But, you know, one thing that she's done over the course of her career, on her very first album, it was very instrumental. You know, there was lyrics in every song, but in terms of how the music was, there was actual instruments in it. Then on her second album, there was less. And now on this one, there's 2, maybe 3 songs that have an actual instrument on it. And normally that's something that I would be pissed off about, or that would turn me away from a record, because I like to hear actual instruments as opposed to synthesized and sampled stuff. But the way that it's done on Singular is just perfect. You know, you got the opening track, Almost Love, right into Paris, and then you got songs Sue Me, Mona Lisa, Diamonds Are Forever. You know, like I said, there's not a bad song on this, and, you know, her last record, it was well received in general, but I feel like for a lot of people, and myself included, as I said, it wasn't as good as her first one. So this one, even though sonically it sounds different from her first album, I feel like it could return to form in a way. And number 11, the last album for this video, Evokin with Hypnagogia. I don't know how long it's been since the last time these guys released a record. I know it's been at least 6 years. But this record, holy shit. For a Funeral Doom record and for a band that hasn't put out an album in a while, god damn. You know, I love Funeral Doom. And, you know, Evokin has had albums in the past where I'm like, damn, you can't top that. But this one here, it's definitely topped everything they've done previously. It's overshadowed, it's cast a shadow, I guess, on the rest of the Funeral Doom scene, in my opinion. You know, this album is just untouchable. There's 8 songs in total. I think a couple of them are instrumental, and you got some of the quicker parts in some of the songs, but You know, for the most part, it's just an incredibly well-composed funeral doom album from a band that knows what they're doing, and you know, that album artwork is just so beautiful. And I'm sure everyone's heard about this. You know, this album's received nothing but praise. You know, I'm kind of struggling what else to say about it because I'm just going to start sounding like everyone else. So I'll just say what everyone else is saying. Go pick this up if you haven't. It's put out on Profound Lore Records as well. Do not sleep on this fucking thing. Definitely give it a listen. And that is going to conclude it for this video. Next video will be my top 10 albums. So stay tuned for that. Thanks for watching and liking and commenting and subscribing as always. And I will see you probably in a couple days. Cheers.